Okay, so this is the game that I put together. I was helping out a lot on Friday, so I didn't have time to sort of make a group or anything, and I figured I'd just make a little solo thing. It's called Ossiphidia, which is probably a legal pun, where ossified is like either Latin or Greek for fossilizing or drying out, and Ophidia is either Greek or Latin for snakes. Probably not the same language though, so it's probably like something that English majors get really upset about. And the basic premise of the game, which I'll try playing backwards here, is that you move along the outside of this sort of skate thing rather, and you collect these scales which make you bigger. And if you, it's hard to steer backwards. And if you hit the thorns, you get smaller and lose a substantial amount of points. So I died and lost a lot of points. That's a pretty typical score for this game. Pretty typical. It's pretty simple, and I'll sort of let it sit and go in the background. This is one of those games where I had the idea for the level first. So I built this this spine structure, which is a single rib, which is then moved along a Bezier curve of a knot, of a trefoil. And I spent a lot of time building that because I like knots, I guess. And then I was like, I should put a game on this too, probably, because it's a game design weekend. So originally, it was actually the same game, and the pieces sort of fell. As you went over the pieces, they fell, but you couldn't see them falling. So you would play for like a minute, and then you come back, and there'd be a strip missing, but there was no, like, I think, a connection that it was you who had taken that away. And in the current one, if you loop around, when you come back, the path that you've sort of gone on is empty, and you can't get any more health from the scales there. So eventually, you just run out of food and die. And usually, if you want to get points, you should do it. You should die intentionally before then, because as you play, what will happen is you eat the things that aren't negative 75 points, and then it's all left is the negative 75 points. But the big problem I had when the game first was coming together was that there was this big divorce between actually removing scales from the track and feeling like you had done anything. There was no sense of intention behind that. So by putting it so you actually saw the scales sort of come into the guy, and then you saw them fall, and then they landed, it gave it a more of an immediate, I'm causing this change feel, I think. I don't know. Any questions? About anything? Nothing. Everyone here knows exactly everything they want to know about the universe. What was the what?
What was it going to do?
Oh yeah, this is in Unity, it's in C#. The graphics are all Blender, and then I have 2 entire textures, which I just took from cgtextures.com. And then the music I did in Renoise, which is like a Milky Tracker-esque thing.
Is that
What? Okay, who wants to go next? Oh, come on. Okay.
Alright. My game is in the programming language called Ruby, and I limited myself to say that I will not use any libraries except for this one that is used for drawing windows and putting shapes on it. So, lots of constraints, lots of fun. Alright, so the point of the game is there's these things that shoot. You want to capture more things that shoot and then destroy everyone else. The point was initially that at about 10 seconds into the game, it would swap who you were playing as. So like, if you were red and you were doing really well, all of a sudden you might become blue. And then, well, blue wasn't doing so hot, so you had to defend yourself against all the other wonderfully terrible things that people did to you, or that you did to yourself in that case. However, I did not get to that point, but that would have been really fun. So that is the game. So like really the only real way you can defend yourself would be to target like one of your things that shoots and just put a bunch of your stuff there. Okay. And then swap back and forth as fast as you can between attacking them and defending yourselves in order to get enough to actually win. So, yeah.
What's determined who controls the vendor?
What's that?
Well, how could you claim what the things it shoots?
The basic rule was you had to have 75% of the cells around it. Like you had to have your bullets had to be the things that were around it, and then there had to be at least 5. So if somebody had like 10 and you had 10, it wouldn't change. But if you had 7 and they had 1, then you would get possession of that target since you guys are shooting people.
We'll talk about a little bit about your process and some of the challenges, some of the things you did right, some of the things you did. And Sam, I meant to ask this for you too, but my mind is not on the edge. I'd like to hear a little bit about the process from you too.
The creative process, or
yeah, like why did you choose this game, and sort of what went right and what went wrong?
So this was really highly inspired by a game from way back when in Linux called Conqueror or Conquest, where you had different planets and you had to send ships, and it was turn-based. So I kind of wanted to do something more real-time there. And as far as problems, mostly it was, I just have not done game programming in forever. So I'm like, how do I do this detection of collision? And it was just silly nonsense like that. So.
Yeah, Sam, can you tell us a little bit about what went right and what went wrong?
Okay. How mathy do you want me to get?
What's that?
How mathy do you want me to get? Okay. Well, there's a thing called gimbal lock, which probably most people are familiar with. They worked in 3D. And that's the problem with using Euler angles and why we use quaternions for 3D math. And there's a similar problem you get when you try and do any kind of movement on the surface of like a tube that's curving around, because it's a little ambiguous which way is forward, because there's a couple ways to interpret forward. And so to get around that, you have to use something called, I think, a wrrrm frame, which is a bunch of vector math that you use. And that's important to make it so that all the spines line up. Otherwise, they would sort of be haphazard, and they wouldn't look like a snake spine so much as a weird tube.
So those snake spines were all procedurally generated?
Yeah, they're built. One of them is built, and then they're all placed procedurally, and then linked together into a single object. So that was probably the single trickiest part. There was a little bit of weirdness getting the multiple cameras to behave properly. That was the big part is the 3D math. It's a very math-heavy game.
Is there anything you wish you had done differently?
Probably not made such a math-heavy game.
We're actually rebuilding it to change the level. Because the first couple levels are tutorial and they're boring. So we're actually jumping it up to level 10, and we're gonna do the presentation from level 10.
As far as I can tell, I had no sound.
Wait, you guys got 10 levels in 48 hours?
What's that?
You guys got 10 levels in 48 hours?
It's actually infinite. It's programmatically generated.
Okay, gotcha.
So yeah, we did a million.
As much as I thought.
What did you write it in?
It's C++ and a C++ library derivative called a library.
Should be like going beep beep.
Yeah, and it's a wrapper for the OpenGL libraries, completely cross-platform. So we built the install file and executable for Windows up online, but anyone can just go out and grab the source files. It's C++, written cross-platform. Download Allegro, it's a free library, and build it for whatever system you want to build it for and play it. So everything about it is open format. Yeah. What's that? Music's all Logic Pro. Yeah, and then it's Aux Vorbis format, so you can play it on pretty much anything. And we don't. This is our game. You navigate a bunch of menus and try to get your audio working.
Try music, maybe.
We're gonna listen to My Little Pony music. Awesome.
I'm just trying to get the sound work here.
Just pick one.
That's working. Sweet.
Yeah, awesome. So we got that.
All right.
And you're on level 10, yeah?
Yep.
Okay, so
Should I start up?
our game, the play of it was real simplistic. I teach over at Stark State. These are a bunch of my students, and we just wanted to tackle something start to finish. And so the gameplay was actually done Friday night. And then the game itself was an unnerving and aggravating mess until about 30 minutes ago. So yeah, okay, go ahead. Yeah, we'll just play it here. Chris here he's our Guitar Hero champion, and so he's gonna handle, because this is basically a rhythm game.
I'm going to start with the mouse wheel. That's not as good.
Oh yeah, we control everything. You can control it with the mouse wheel, the normal number pads, or a Guitar Hero guitar if you wanted to. What'd you do, Chris? What'd you do, Chris?
Was it an aggravating mess?
Oh,
Because
this isn't even the project, that's why.
You opened the wrong project.
Was it an aggravating mess because you didn't pull the 2/3? You didn't cut 2/3, you got too ambitious?
No, our scope was fine. The problem was we had ideas of these animations and things like that. The problem is that the native support for things like JPEGs and Allegro is not the greatest, and so our file sizes ended up being too big, and so we had to go back to and add to the scope by writing by hand an animation engine, as opposed to using static animations in such a fashion that it would seem like they were like cool, trippy, psychedelic 3D. They ended up just being orbs.
Sweet.
Okay, go ahead. Yep. And so, yeah,
Hopefully it's loud enough.
it'll be loud enough.
What would like full screen it?
It didn't go full screen, but there you go.
I didn't hear it.
I didn't hear it either. But music by Ian. We actually don't have a whole lot of music. We tried to make it as minimalistic, depressing as possible. You can't win, you can't lose. Actually, the only way to win this game is to not play it. And the idea is that as you are successfly beating the game, you're also losing the game because there's consistently less and less of you. And the idea is, yeah, you're collecting more and more stuff to be less and less of a thing, and colors fit in there somewhere. We went for the sounds to be as completely unnerving as possible, but generally a bunch of tones. Yeah, that's what happens when you miss one. And then we wanted a large juxtapositioning at the point of critical mass, if you will.
Turn the volume down.
Down a little bit. Yeah, turn it down.
It's wubbing.
It's wubbing. We wanted dubstep.
Blow the speakers out though.
Yeah.
Seriously, turn it down.
I got it half mass now.
There you go. That was
See, it is
good.
okay.
We wanted a juxtapositioning, so right before you complete a level, there's just very little on the screen.
Ready?
To the point of completing the level. Yeah, we're ready to complete the level. And then this is kind of what we envisioned for the. Just as much sound as possible. It sounds better when you turn it up like really, really, really high. We're not obviously going to, but I just, you wanted. I called it the wall of sound, and Ian did a very good job of just creating just this cacophony of loops and tracks and electric guitar and drums and just every sound you could possibly conceive. Do you have a question here, sir?
Yeah. How did you get from the theme to this?
Well, there's a whole lot of the theme went into this. First, you can't win, you can't lose. It never ends. So there's the obvious one there. By consuming, you become less, which is also the theme of the snake. Not to mention that generally the theme of the snake has a lot to do with lines or bands, and these are bands of this color spectrum, the Roy-G rainbow color spectrum. Not to mention the themes of isolation and loneliness. You're supposed to feel just unnerved and lonely and depressed when you play this game. Like truly you benefit by not playing this game. Like you're supposed to live for this moment here. And actually, based on how it ended up getting written, by level 15, you would have to be insane to beat level 15. Like it is truly a battle in complete and utter frustration.
Did it.
Well, you beat, yeah, but not 18.
I couldn't get past 18.
Not 18. But it starts coming to a point that it becomes very difficult to progress because you can hit 50 marks in a row, and at the speeds level 18 is, it's ridiculously fast, but you still only gain so very little. So you're really not making for so much work, you're gaining almost no ground. It's kind of a critical mass that you can't extend past. So it's real simplistic. The early levels are boring, which is why we jump right into 10. It's a balancing issue. In future iterations, we'll take more care to make it a more consistent play experience. Feels like it takes too long to get fun and gets impossible too quick after that. But only having so much time. And yeah, man, all I can say is you should have seen the effects we had planned. They were awesome, but it doesn't always work out. You guys got anything you want to add there?
No, thanks to Ian again, because I know he was working on a bunch of people's projects.
Yeah.
He really captured exactly what we wanted in a lot of the sounds.
Well, and a lot of times we didn't know what we wanted. And he was like, no, this is what you want.
And then you played it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. So yeah, I actually said they were going to present, not me, and it didn't happen that way. I guess I just like to talk too much. You guys have anything else?
Can you guys talk about like
Thanks for letting us be a part of it.
What's up?
what you ran into that you kind of got stuck on, what some of your major frustrations were in the process?
Well, if you have a 1024 by 600 frame that has 150 frames of animation, it makes for a very, very large PNG file, and one that will take up 100 megs of virtual RAM, or video RAM, I mean. And so that was a problem. We tried to compress, and we actually got it down to 10 megs for one of those, but it's just not happening.
This video right here.
What's that?
This video right here.
That's all programmatically generated. Well, the bar isn't programmatically generated, but everything else is programmatically generated. And the bar is actually a very small, repeating tinted pattern. So it actually takes up not a whole lot. But I mean, honestly, like getting the syncing right, not using a game engine, we did all of the timing and the particle effects. All that was custom written. The control structures, the game state. We have a finite state machine that controls pretty much all of the different aspects of gameplay. Yeah, it just took a long time to code all the little nuances that you take advantage of when you have a game engine, but you don't have necessarily access to when you're writing from scratch.
Collectively, how much sleep did you guys get?
What's that?
Collectively, how much sleep did you guys
Well,
get?
I got 7 hours.
Yeah, I got.
I worked 4 to 4 and then 4 to 7 last, or I was slept 4 to 4 and then 4 to 7 last night. These guys partied. I don't know what they did. And
I think I
then
got 7 as well.
Yeah, I was right at that.
I got 5 last night, other than that, I don't recall any other.
yeah, it's all kind of a blur of squinting,
Colors.
more or less.
Colors
Yeah.
and numbers.
And colors and anvil hits and it's impossible to tell the difference between blue and indigo. By the way, I honestly think they originally had 4 colors in the spectrum, and someone's like, "We need 7. Let's just split blue up a whole bunch." But yeah, I don't think it should
It's
be.
interesting that you mentioned that, because one thing you might want to think about is if you decide to take this anywhere,
Yeah,
is maybe representing them symbolically or something for colorblind people.
yeah. No, we're taking this all the way to the top. All the way to the top. What's that?
I could play this because the middle range and the last two practically look the same.
Oh yeah, they do, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's rough, especially when they start coming. What level are you on now?
Let me read this level and I'll count.
We live for that right there. Just a little, the headbanging moment of graffiti balls.
Like I said, at level, 18 is what I got to. Past that.
Yeah, you're on a lot.
2, 4, 6.
The entire UI too. We went as completely minimal as
I'm on level
possible.
16 right now.
Yeah, so you just have to count the little white orbs to tell what level you're on. You have the little band at the bottom to tell what color you're on, and you got just a little indicator on the right that tells you what color's coming next. And other than that, you're pretty much on your own.
Two-hand keyboard in this right now. So.
Your 2-hand keyboard. See, that's the skills right there. So actually, yeah, it actually looks pretty good on the projector. So I'm pretty excited about that.
It's
Yeah.
bigger than it should be, like full screen device.
Any other questions or anything? Well, it was fun. This was our first time doing something like this, and I had a whole bunch of students who wish they could have made it but couldn't. So we get to brag about it and rub their faces in it, and yeah, cool. All right, well, thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us. No, not one more. You're done.
You're done.
I'm almost there. I was 2. They're gonna regret that.
Yeah.
They need that explosion.
Who's up? Okay, come on up.
We're just going to sort of go straight into the game here for a bit. As you can see, the idea behind our game is that you're collecting the bits in this dungeon, and it adjusts the next level of the dungeon as you get it. So if you look at it really closely as he's picking stuff up, okay, he has to go to the next.
Full transition.
Okay. Leave it there for now. Okay, so now we're actually going to start with the introduction rather than with.
Okay, it'll go back to the play.
Is that
Don't click. Don't click.
Yeah.
Is that an Einstein?
No. That's a bearded snake. So the title of our game is The Bit Dungeons of Ourobeardos. We have, it did not start playing, we were going to start playing this first, but we actually did sort of make a sort of an opening cutscene for the game that explains the story behind it and somewhat of the mechanics, but like nothing about how you control it. Just sort of gives you an idea of why you're doing what you're doing, but not really how to do it. As far as the mechanics, I think he's going to be better explaining it because he actually did all the programming. He took it all on, but you failed immediately.
The mechanics were just like a spur of the moment thing when we were doing our brainstorming thing. I thought of this idea of having a board within a board going on there. This would constantly moving.
Well, this was this was
so
what we were talking.
You have to like make this board kind of like more navigable before you dive into it. So the challenge would be trying to make it workable, and you have a set time limit. I think it's like 15 seconds or something to try to get that board and flip the tiles so that you can actually wander around and collect the scrolls and get to the next version of the board, which you can see here. That's where it's going to be.
Currently, we have it set with the diversifier as know your target audience for you actually are actively programming it, because you technically are.
Absurdly difficult, yeah.
Yeah, we haven't actually gotten to the point where you win yet, but we know you're supposed to be able to.
Theoretically,
You can. The object is to collect the scrolls that are these sort of weird paper scroll floppy disk hybrids you see there that eventually when you get enough you win. Sort of the genesis of the game was when we started this, I came in with the idea of doing a hybrid of a video game and a board game where you would actively go back and forth between the two. Now, of course, as you can tell, there's no board game element of this right now because that was just something we did not have time to implement. However, a lot of the inspiration for this came from like some of the earlier stuff that you saw in the 1980s for video games and stuff like that. There was just like a lot of simplistic stuff. So in some sense, this game is a send-off to things from the 80s that a lot of people love, like over-the-top sword and sorcery epics and really hard games with simplistic graphics, simplistic gameplay. But like a completely abstract goal. So like you really don't know what you're doing or how you're doing it.
So yeah, if you
that's actually intentional.
That's intentional. Yeah,
it's intentional. It's a puzzle game. So we want you to be able to lose. Because you're actually actively making the next level. So
if you don't do a good
if you don't gather the right bits, if you don't do the right thing and gather your bits, your entire row is going to be messed up.
Can you explain a little bit more how the bits that you gather change the next level?
Sure. You've got this register on top. Let me start that. So up here, this is your sort of a register. And as you collect bits, they kind of push the bits on the register here.
Stand still for a moment.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're moving near the mini map here, can you go towards can you go left a little bit? Okay, you can see something's highlighted there. And when you press the space bar, if there's a 1 in each of these registers, it looks down each row or column depending on how you're lined up, and it'll flip whatever has a 1. So like if you have all 1s, it'll just flip everything in the row you're lined up with, or if you have like half, it'll flip half of the things in there. So that's how you're trying to construct the level so that you can get to the scroll and get to the exit and keep playing the game.
But
like I said, I found it incredibly hard to do.
Unfortunately, there's a lot that we did just not have time to implement. We actually wrote a number of songs for the game that just are not in there.
As you can tell,
I actually produced an alternative tile set, actually more than one alternative tile set. And the original idea was that eventually certain permutations of what you're seeing above would cause the tile set to flip. So like instead of having this more realistic high fantasy tile set, you'd have something that would be more like something out of Tron. Because the idea is sort of that while this is like a high fantasy setting, it's actually all happening within a computer, that you're stuck in some sort of infinite loop of calculations. And it's just going over and over and over and over and over and over and over, and that basically you're just trying to end the horrible, devastating magic that caused This happened. There is an opening cutscene that we have that explains this. If we actually wanted to get out of this, we might be able to play it. If you have a build where you know that it works, because that actually gives the full backstory. Yeah, we do have it, so you should be able to run. And that actually, I spent a while perfecting the feel of that opening that I wrote. So basically, as far as the breakdown was, he did the sound design, mainly. He did all the programming, and I did pretty much all the two-dimensional artwork, except for the floppy scroll hybrids, which he did. But there's most of the artwork for the game is actually not in there, and there are animations for a lot of it, but we just did not have time to animate it.
So what are some of the things you guys struggled with as you sort of headed towards the deadline? And did you guys feel ready to submit at 3 o'clock?
It was a lack of what we had implemented. It was mainly there was a rate of just this is a problem that basically only one of us was programming it, and the problem is neither the other two of us know Unity, so we just had no familiarity with it. So
and I spent like a full day just trying to figure out how to get that endless zooming to work. And after I was done, thank you, but I implemented it like exactly wrong. So it wasn't the sort of thing where you could add new features easily because of the way I did it. So.
But did you find
He was having trouble finding it. Can you find it? Maybe they email it?
Press the space bar?
I would just leave it.
Yeah.
No, the space bar is skipping.
Yeah, because it's skipping.
Just run it in the window. Okay. We're bickering on this, but listen to the audio.
Once upon a time, there was a wizard that discovered the magic of life, the universe, and everything. The magic of the gods.
And I wrote the text of this and made it intentionally over the top and cheesy, classic swords and sorcery epic style.
I just sort of put it in the program. So.
He did not realize that for the gods, there is no middle ground. There is no gray. Just black and white. Good and evil. True or false. Yes or no. In using this magic, he cursed all of existence to repeat endlessly. Civilization rises and falls, only to rise and fall again, never truly changing. The end of the world is the beginning. Time loops back on itself, and a once infinite plane to explore is now bound to a sphere. As punishment for his arrogance, the gods curse the wizard to take the form of a mortal serpent, to live out all eternity as the one witness to the horror he wrought. The wizard, to avoid further temptation, cast the magic out of his mind, binding it to scrolls and placing these scrolls in labyrinths of his own design. Crafted with the last of his godly magic, these mazes serve as dungeons for those who enter, pocket realities, adjusting to the whim of their occupants. The only means of escape is the magic they protect. Your quest, should you choose to accept it, is to travel throughout this realm and gather the wizard's magic. The journey will be perilous, but those who manage to obtain the scrolls and escape these worlds of nightmare should be wise enough to use the magic and end the curse, as the wizard never could. Now go forth, if you dare, and enter the Bit Dungeons of Ourobeardos.
And that's the name drop, yeah. I wrote that Friday night. We should down, man. Come on, down.
Good job, you guys.
But yeah, that text was written. Now, as you recall, and as was hinted in this is like some sort of infinite calculation loop that you're stuck in. So let's show them the win screen. The end. It's a happy ending, but kind of a...
Cool, sweet.
Thank you. So, any questions further? Please have questions.
Well, I'd like to know about what each of you feel was the biggest challenge for you in this project. Just like among sentences.
Biggest challenge. You know, really, during the entire time, it felt quite a bit almost like we were just, some of us were, well, by some of us I mean the two of us over here, we were sort of spinning our wheels, just like creating things that were not needed. And the issue was we really should have come up with this language that at least two of us knew, that we would co-develop in and share some of the burden programming it. But I think that's pretty much
Yeah, we couldn't really
the
progress at the
sole
same pace.
source of the challenge for why it wasn't done. Because I feel like we actually bit off the exact amount that was the right amount, but we created a backlog for him, and that just created a lot of problems. I've actually considered doing like a complete tangent build, like going off and like redoing the entire game in a different engine and seeing how quickly I can do that, but I probably would not do that today at this point before uploading it. I thought about doing it, seeing if I could recreate it in like an hour, because like most of the stuff is already done, so I just have to redo it in a different way, but it wouldn't be quite as cool, so I'd probably just leave it alone. Any other questions?
For me,
Yeah. Sorry.
For me, probably just being useful. I've never done game design before, so done some modding of levels for games, but I've never done anything like this. So it was pretty cool to get to do some sound stuff and learn a lot about it.
The biggest challenge, or did I? Zooming, yeah.
So yeah, getting it to be structured well, because it's essentially tile-based, but internally it has no real concept that there are tiles, and that caused a whole lot of headaches. So.
Thank you guys. That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
So, we want to play a board game?
Yeah.
Okay.
Players?
Yeah. So, you can play with just two people, but I mean, anybody else want to play? Nobody likes playing board games? Yes.
Oh, red.
Excellent. Choose. Do you want red wolfy thing or a green turtle?
I'll do the red wolfy thing.
Alright.
Can I be the green turtle?
I really do you want to get the last one? Okay, so place yourself on one of the tiles on the four sides of the center there. So any one of these four adjacent to the center tile. So placement doesn't really matter. It's just where you start the game. Each turn you roll the die and nice try. Each turn you roll the die and the tile will tell you which direction to move.
For those of you who can't see, the tiles have sort of a fork of some sort and numbers in each direction that you can go in.
Mm-hmm. And the tiles tell you which direction to move, and after you've moved in that direction, if you can, you also take one tile from the edge of the map, flip it over, and place it somewhere else on the map. So the map is constantly changing after each person's turn. You can use that to your advantage or to sort of mess with the other people, because the objective is to be the last one standing. So if you're on an edge, and say you rolled a 3 or a 4 here, you would be in the water. And you get one chance on your next turn to try and roll a 3 or 4 to get back onto the tile where you were. Otherwise, you're out. So, who would like to go first? All right.
That's okay, it's a 5.
5. All right. So you move into the center, and now take one tile, flip it, and place it somewhere else. At this point, you're in pretty good shape, so you put it wherever you want.
What if you lock somebody in their spot?
If you lock somebody in your spot, you can move into someone else's tile.
Oh, do I place it off the edge of the board? Or
Yeah, place it on another edge.
But like, can you? If somebody's got like a 4 for 2, and then you block both of them, can they just not?
If you can't move, then the tile you're standing on rotates 90 degrees.
Okay. Can I move on the same tile as him?
Yes, you can. All right. So now you choose evens or odds.
Odds.
Now you roll. Because he's trying to take over your tile.
Got it.
All right. So you win. So you get to push him one tile away from where you are. So there you go.
Now I pick the tile and move?
Yep. And now you move a tile somewhere else. Oh, he's being very kind to you.
Red kitten of death!
Yes, little red doom kitten. 3. To move out that way. There you go, and now you flip a tile and move it somewhere else.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and remember, you want to be the last one standing, so creating gaps near other people is your best bet.
I guess.
Oh, yeah, we also got to flip it. Yep, just keep it mixed up. Once. Oh boy.
This
All right.
is not good.
No, that's all right. You're relatively
Can I hope for the best?
No, you want to keep that one there.
I want to keep this one.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to go.
Yeah. So I'd say probably pull one away from one of the other guys. Force them into the water if you can.
How would one of these force them into the water?
Well,
or like getting rid of this?
This
or
is
like-
true. Yeah, you can just move. You can move those, sure, and then place it somewhere else. Place it in a different location.
Gotcha.
All right. Cool. Next.
Start.
So, yeah. So there's a little bit of luck, and you have to go by whatever.
it's me. Oh, that's right.
Oh, nice. So you pick evens or odds?
Evens.
Hey, roll. Texas. Oh, it's evens. All right. So you get to push him one tile. You can't push him into the water, but you can push him all the way over the edge too. Ah, that works. You guys are being very for a game about being the last one standing. You guys are being very kind to one another.
Can't we all just live on these pieces forever?
Yeah.
So you can remove any tile.
Any tile that's on an edge. You can't just pull one out of the middle. So you can move this one. That works. All right. So flip it over and then place it in a different location too. Put it somewhere where it was. That works.
Oh, it can.
Yeah. You can.
Oh.
So I screwdriver, man.
This is an okay thing.
3. Okay. Yeah. You guys just keep fighting over those same tiles. All right. So pick even or odds.
So now you can push him in the water.
No, you can't push anyone to anywhere, but you can push him to this tile or that tile. So you can push him off the edge. There you go.
Okay.
6. Oh, splash.
So I won.
That's
So
Nice.
I get one to get.
No. So you get to move a tile again this turn,
Okay.
and then on your next turn you get to try and roll to escape. So go ahead and move a tile, like yeah, pull out one of those, and flip it, and set it somewhere else. That works. Yeah, we're running out of table space a bit. There you go.
What could possibly?
And then no, next turn.
Next turn. Gotcha.
Yeah. So that gives the other players a chance to either help you out or yeah. So 6. Oh, no, that's actually that doesn't connect. So yeah, you have to rotate, spin the tile that you're on. So you could spin it back this way, so you don't have an immediate threat of jumping into the water. And then you move a tile. You could either there's basically one of two ways. You could take something from a part of the board that nobody's using and try and help yourself out, or there you go. Take something from over there and try and screw over your opponent.
Do we want to move to questions as we're playing here?
Yeah, sorry.
Questions?
Yeah, do you have a written set of rules for this?
Yes, I do. It's on the game page. I have a whole typed up set of rules, as well as printable tile pages if you want to print them off and try yourself.
Are these hand-drawn tiles right now?
Yes, at the moment they're extremely
So did
sketchy.
you put the hand-drawn diversifier? I think it was a hand-drawn diversifier.
Yeah, there was, but the ones that I actually uploaded to the site were I went MS Paint because MS Paint is awesome. Splash.
I can move one of these motherfuckers.
That's true.
You're gone.
Any other questions?
Yeah, you can take one from over here and place it there and give yourself some more options.
Hey guys.
We've got 8 teams to go through in 40 minutes, so I think we're going to have
Oh,
to
jeez.
start
Okay, yeah.
putting caps on display time.
So we lost.
So we're going to lightning round demos in about 5 minutes.
Yep,
We can
that's
start getting the next team set up.
Yeah.
That's what you guys added battle elements.
Yeah, that was initially one of the problems, is that it was started off as 2 players both going in opposite directions and just using the map to kind of mess with each other. Cool. And I realized that there was with 2 players it was just sort of a rare thing, but with 4 players you had a lot more people bumping into one another. So trying to figure out how to actually make that.
Cool. So we have all the rules. What happens when you roll to escape?
What happens when you roll to escape? So if you were to roll a 6, then you could choose either here or here to pull yourself back onto a tile.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Thanks, guys. Glad you guys liked it. All made sense? Everyone?
Yes, so.
What's your team page?
Flotsam. It was the Flotsam board game. Because the concept was you are on a shipwreck and none of the individual pieces are buoyant enough to support you, so you basically have to try and stay afloat while your friends are sinking.
All right, basically, hey, I'm Andy. This is Dave. Dave is our team lead. We work with Liz, who did our art, and Ann did our music, did an incredible job with the music. Real thankful we had him. Our game is called The Final Drive. You're driving a kind of a Volkswagen van, old van, and you're kind of just running away from the end of the earth. It's 2D, but we kind of call it 2.5D. It has depth, but it's a 2D kind of side scroller game, and we'll start it
Let's
up.
just get to it then, I guess.
Show you
All right.
about. Yeah, we're
Yeah,
using
we're using
an
a
Xbox
Xbox
controller.
controller.
We use the XNA format. Big thing that we wanted to incorporate was we wanted to use a diversifier.
It was
Good vibrations.
Good vibrations, yeah.
So haptic feedback. It's all in relations to how close you are to the edge of the earth. There. So.
Okay. So here we go. Oh,
all right. Good.
I hit a bunch of things. So I didn't last too long there. Let's try that again. So
Dave worked in a kind of a real nice parallax background. You'll see a lot of the stuff in the foreground is moving a lot quicker than the stuff in the background. That's kind of a nice. Oh, we had a little depth issues there.
Yeah. But yeah, when you run into things, the void gets closer to you, and yeah. So you just try to keep going as long as you can.
What's your high score?
I think I got like a minute something once. So yeah.
Just like everybody, we definitely wish we had another day with it.
Yeah.
To adjust settings, what works, what makes it a good game.
We didn't get to do a whole lot of play testing.
Yeah.
So
the music.
What's it? Yeah, that's it.
Lab Pro.
Yeah, that was on Logic also.
Logic Pro.
Yeah. Sounds great.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
What do you guys feel is the biggest challenge about this challenge and the project?
Well, for me, since I've never been in like an event like this before, I think it was mostly the time constraint. I wasn't really sure how to budget my time, I guess. We did start with like an engine that I had built for a friend to get him off the ground initially, but it was a platforming engine, so we had to kind of adapt it. So, yeah.
We got a slow start a little bit. I think.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what we wanted to do, and we had an initial idea that we developed pretty far, but then realized that it wouldn't really be like an exciting game. That's kind of what we wanted to go for.
So basically, at the beginning intro, they said fail early. Well, I think it'd be better if you didn't fail at all. I think that would have helped us out a little bit. But we did fail early. So really, that probably helped us a little bit.
Yeah.
Whose idea were the tentables and the smoke?
That was me. I kind of brainstormed with a friend like a while ago. We wanted to build a game like over a weekend, kind of like this, and that's what we came up with. And so
You phoned in a friend?
no, it was a while ago, like last month or something. But yeah, I don't know. I just kind of thought up the tentacles. The initial idea was to have big monsters and stuff back there, and as the game went on, the screen would pan backwards, or pan out rather, or zoom out. That's the word. And you would see like larger and larger monsters, and just you would see the scale of what's coming after you, and like you'd end up with these huge monsters behind you, and you're just like this little tiny bus, So.
One cool thing about the game, the tentacles, it's actually built on a skeleton sort of bone system that Dave kind of put together. So those are actually like individual pictures pieced together that are actually like kind of moving and switching different angles, and they're kind of connected like a skeleton.
Mm-hmm.
We were actually going to use that. We had a head made. We didn't get that implemented near the end.
Yeah.
We were also going to like make a little creature that like runs behind you and is like trying to like slash your tires. But what you have to do is you have to like avoid it, make him run into one of the obstacles, and if he runs into the obstacles, he's done. So that's how you defend yourself from him. So again, if we had a little more.
Yeah, if we had a little more time, then.
Still, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's fun.
Good job, guys. So, our game, this is the first time I've really collaborated with another developer this far along on a project. Most of them have kind of been on my own. I think that it was a good fit because we're both big fans of the narrative. I think as a kid, I played a lot of games for the story, and I would be really pissed if there wasn't a good story at the end.
Right. Although I was kind of shocked, I was expecting to focus on a game mechanic and make a story around, not even a story, but a concept around a mechanic. That is completely not what we did.
Oh, we had like this great story.
There's a lot of metaphysical analogies in this.
Yeah, yeah. So
it's called Ouroboros, whatever.
Yeah, so we're losing a little bit of the detail. Let me do it again, lower resolution. So the initial idea is that we wanted to make a game that was crushingly depressing and yet charming. And so the idea that we came up with is Stephanie was really interested in sort of what are those mountains called?
The Snake Mounds in Ohio, where the mound looks like the earth is moving around you and you can't escape from it.
And I sort of had this idea about a mouse that like gets eaten by a snake and then like is searching for its mother inside the snake and finds its mom and they both leave the snake and then they just get eaten by another snake. It's like the whole thing. So like the combination of those two ideas sort of ended up in this sort of ethereal.
And then a lot of imaginative storyboarding and stuff like
yes.
that. But we ended up in the Zelda dungeon, kind of.
Yeah. I mean it's a 2D one, but you still can't see the cool logo. So
I think it's a camera issue.
All right, it probably. I'm just gonna. I'm just gonna have to suck it up. No, that like is not gonna work.
Okay. So the idea is.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna keep.
So the idea that we kind of kept was that there's this object that is constantly moving. It's, part of the earth. You can't stop it. You just sort of acknowledge it. You can, walk on it or not. But it's part of the scenery and the environment.
The music's all very cyclical, a lot of overlapping parts. And, I recorded a lot of it in a round. So there's this constantly moving voices that create harmony.
And so the idea of the story is that you're this girl that's in a temple for some reason, and you've got these flowers. And the temple walls are moving around you, and it's sort of creepy, and you're there for a reason. And we didn't get as far as we wanted to, but sort of like, in the end, you go to like get to your destination, and then you die, and you turn into one of these rocks, and then then you realize that you fall into like the walls that are moving are the Ouroboros. That was our concept, and we didn't quite get there, but it was still so. And I just want to say that like a lot of this art, really a lot of the style decision is Stephanie's, and it's I think fantastic. We didn't quite get into we didn't get to a point where we could
That's a feature.
But the idea is that you sort of like you have to fit into these little sections in between this snake as it sort of goes around the level.
We didn't get the finalized models for the snake.
Yeah, we didn't get there. He was really supposed to like take out the whole board and like you would get stuck waiting on him. And so we originally had 4 levels, but I had a lot of trouble like getting the snake to work, and I probably obsessed about it a little too much. And so we kind of ended up with like this pseudo level done, and like this is the part where you would have died if we were dead, but instead you're alive, which maybe you're all happier about anyway. Yeah, well, it's just into it.
Oh yeah, and there's petals falling everywhere.
Yeah, and so the petals are sort of symbolic of blood and sort of beauty and sort of like how. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm out of analogies. I'm all analogies.
How life and death sort of fold up and into one big lump of moonwalking. Awesome. Which is totally sweet. So that's our game.
Okay, so.
Yeah. Oh, and the level designs actually Eli did, and I don't think we would have been. We implemented half of one of his, and I don't think we would have gotten that far if he hadn't done that. And he did all our playtesting, and he did the title screen and script, and you did some playtesting. All right, he was moral support and development support, and the music is. I don't think anything could suit our charmingly crushingly depressing game any better. So that's all. All right. Any questions?
How do you know where you're supposed to go because you're so zoomed in? You can't really see the whole
Yeah,
level?
like when we're not on a projector, you get a little more view. Yeah. It looks better on my projector. I guess it was sort of made for high resolution. I didn't really think about that when I was doing. You have questions?
How did you guys pick the whole Mayan theme?
How do we pick that?
Snake mounds.
The snake mounds,
Yeah.
and then we kind of thought, someone more connected with the earth, not so.
Well, and we wanted our main character to be a minority. We kind of feel like, video games are generally about people who kick ass and are awesome and not about little girls dying. And, we just thought we needed a little more of that.
Outside the box.
Even though you're inside.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there they go again. All right.
Through the bags, between the bags.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
So this is a web-based game. It's all HTML and JavaScript, and I really wanted to do that, and no one else who was free was doing that, so I thought I would work on a team of my own, which was really interesting. Basically, the concept is just that it's this simple little side-scroller game that takes place on the back of an Orbrs, and every once in a while you'll see the head comes around, and when it does, that means that you've made it to a new level. So originally the levels were randomly generated, but I decided a little later on that I wanted to do them, I wanted to actually design them. So there are about 7 levels that I managed to make before the time was up. They do get more difficult. The snake changes speeds. There get to be larger patches of spikes that you have to jump over clouds to get past. At one point it actually changes direction and goes the other way.
It starts throwing up. I have a question, I don't mind answering one at this point.
Yeah.
You said that patches of thorns become larger. Do you have it set up in any way that would be possible to jump over a very large patch of thorns eventually, or is it?
No. There is nothing like that so far. I played with the idea of adding things in like that, things that you could collect, like power-ups, like you might have in another side-scroller, but, I basically decided to keep the initial idea as simple as possible and build outwards from there. So this is as far as I got. The basic idea was just a guy running along a snake, and then I thought, well, I can make some spikes, and then I thought, well, I can make some clouds, and that's as far as I got. I built this using JavaScript and a framework called Crafty. Something that was really challenging is that the framework I was using is actually very young and very incomplete and a little bit buggy. So a lot of building this game was actually sort of hacking around the limitations of my framework. Although it's a good frameworking concept. At least I think it's a good frameworking concept. I'm new to game development, so I don't really know too much about what most game frameworks are like. Another challenge was that I had all these special effects that I wanted to achieve, and I actually started out just sort of building the game exactly the way that I wanted it to look. And what ended up happening is that really...
Jump. Oh, the W faster?
You made it! So something that happened is when I first built it and built it exactly the way I wanted it to look, it ran very sluggishly in most web browsers, which is interesting. And it meant that I ended up having to sort of pare it down to this very simple aesthetic.
And do you feel like that is a better aesthetic now that you did pare it down, or do you wish you could have gone with
I actually kind of wish I could have done the fancier one, and I'll actually show that as soon as Sam has had a little more fun. Because I did sort of set a switch where you could change it. If you go up to the top of the mouse and just add, the URL bar should drop down. No? Great. Here, I'll get it.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
I have a question.
No, you just go back to the level where you just came from.
Can you win?
Yes, you can win once you beat all 7 levels. There's an ending screen. Nothing too exciting happens because I, had this basic setup and didn't have time to make anything fancier. But I'm pretty happy with how it came out in the time that I had. Yeah.
Two questions. Do you have any browser compatibility issues?
So I've only tested this in 3 browsers, which are the newest versions of Safari, Firefox, and Chrome. No, I did not try IE.
You missed a huge one.
I came into some incompatibilities while I was building it, but I fixed them. So it works in all 3 browsers. It's a little more sluggish in Firefox than it is in the other 2. Especially if you play it like this, it's basically unusable.
Did you write the music?
No, Jared wrote me the music.
Okay.
He's not here right now, but yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted by way of music. Game music is something of a mystery to me, so I showed him what I had and told him, something sort of not too stressful and kind of ambient, and this is what he gave me, and it's really great.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Lunacy? I'm not sure if the most recent build is up on HTML5. The idea was it's a cross-browser browser for web developers, and it has 3 separate CPUs last time. One for Internet Explorer called Firefox, one for Firefox, and one for Safari.
No, I haven't looked at that. When I started making this game, I decided that I didn't have time to worry about, cross-browser compatibility, that I would build it for the browsers I knew it would work in. And of course, it won't work in older browsers because it takes place on a circular platform. I made a lot of use of CSS transforms, which are very new and only work in new browsers. So all that rotation that you see is actually done with CSS and JavaScript.
That's cool. How'd you store your levels at Asciiboros?
No, the levels are actually just JavaScript functions. I'm sure that I could sort of clean it up and generalize them a little, but it was easier to write quickly and keep it flexible by just writing a function to generate each level when you got to it.
At any point you consider utilizing WebGL perhaps to accomplish some of this?
I actually have never used that and don't know much about it. And I'm sure there actually would be ways to optimize the JavaScript, but JavaScript optimization is sort of a dark art that I haven't quite mastered yet.
Great, thank you. That looks fantastic.
I wasn't watching. Did they
Apparently
get to
it's
the level
fun
where it
because-
goes backwards?
No.
Yeah, there's one level where it starts going this way and then it turns around and goes the other way and you have to run in the other direction, which is surprisingly difficult because it's not what you're used to. Actually, while they're setting up, that's something else I want to say. It was really interesting working as a team on my own and watching other teams work. I'm sure, in some ways it was more challenging because I had to do more work, so I was pretty much just working the entire weekend when I was awake. But I also saw that I was able to bootstrap a lot quicker because we didn't have a lot of conversations because it was just me, and I was just I'm just going to sit down and code this and figure it out while I'm coding. So it was interesting to see that difference. Right.
We have this game that it's pretty rad beyond belief, and yeah. So where do we gonna start? Jared the music.
Also wanted a minority.
Yeah, that's right. We went on minority character, and so we picked this guy here. He's a Biclops. There's not a lot of these around, so we wanted everyone to be able to relate to the character in this way. That's a very important thing. So you start a game. Your character slowly catches on fire over time. So this is a terrible thing. And if you touch water droplets, then you're very happy and you don't catch on fire. And if you don't, then you die and you burn.
I love it.
We have this wonderful thing that was supposed to be colored, and this is how much time before you're completely on fire. And you have these water drops that you can... And you hit the water drops and it tells you how wonderful you are. So you want to hit this rain cloud in the end. This is the eventual thing that you want to do. He loves the water. What's that? Yeah, so the way that we designed these levels is so that it was these are really just the tutorial levels. It's so that it leads you where you want to go to give you an idea of how this world works. So you run off the right side of the screen and you up on the left side of the screen. But then again, if you fall through the floor, then you fall through the ceiling of the previous one. So it's this It's not quite.
You should go left.
Yeah, so let's go left. And then all of a sudden the left one ends into the front of this one. And then I'd finish before you die.
Oh.
Okay, so here we have this other level. So we're intuitively following these water drops, but our thing's above us and we can't get it. So if we learned anything from the level before, then we might be able to go right and then fall down. So we had this thing, we can fall down. And that's really tough. So here we have this thing where we're like, oh, we can just jump up. So we just jump up, but it's just frustrating. Can we get up the side? So it's like this absolutely aggravating. Conveniently, if you fall off the side, then you win. And this is our game. Yes, Dave did the art. Jared was our elected leader. That's okay.
Kill that real quick.
We only got through making the tutorial levels. And yeah, so this is what we got. Yeah, what's up? The theme. So we have this endless cycle. You can keep running right, and you'll always end up on your same track. And you can keep falling. You go far, like fall to the side of that one. And it's like if you keep falling, you'll keep falling backwards. If you keep running, then you'll keep running forwards. You keep falling, you'll keep falling backwards. So there's this endless cycle. And then we got into the programming and the making and then thinking. And then there's this person who's the music. And then all of a sudden there's these decisions made and choices where we have a character that's on fire, that's a Biclops, and would have been a hill in music, practically, and it kind of distracted that from a little bit, but that was where it started from, and that's where it deterred to, and at one point, we said that having a completed thing was a huge priority, so we didn't have anything more than tutorial levels. Yeah? Yeah.
All those particles.
Unity gives us everything. Yeah, it really gives you a lot. Another thing was, a lot of people were saying, like, build a game that you think you can do in 48 hours, and then hack off 2/3 of it, and then another third, and then, and then best of luck. And I thought, like, well, why don't I just, well, okay, let's think about this. If I'm actually planning on sleeping a little bit, then I can just hack off that time. And if I'm supposed to hack off 2/3 later, then why don't I just picture a game that I think I can make in 12 hours, and then not cut anything? And that's kind of what we ended up doing. And that was a good approach as well. Yeah, so if he burns all the way, he's getting there.
So did it take you more than 12 hours to make?
Yeah, so that's what we had. And that was good. That was it.
That's awesome, man.
It seems really awesome. Everybody did incredible things, and I'm pretty tired. So
We never saw the little Godzilla dude.
Oh, he's in the levels. No, he didn't make him.
Yeah, if we could do one more thing, it would make. I think that this game would make a lot more sense if he was there to light your feet on fire at the beginning of every level.
That was the 13th hour.
We were initially Team Reptar, but we had to change it probably
For licensing reasons.
Yeah, teased you for
Yeah, gnued it out. Good now though. Yeah.
Who did the music?
Jared did, but he has a beautiful family in which he is loving right now.
And then Nick, that was with us, he did sound effects. So like the voices and stuff.
Yeah, all the screaming. We were afraid airport security was gonna think somebody died, but he's recovering right now. So, yeah. Next.
Good job, guys.
Our plan was to make some kind of strategy game involving a lot of particles where you were a parasite trying to take over a host, and then when you took over the host, that would be the new level. Since you played through it, but we ran into some implementation issues, like somewhere between 12 and 20 hours in, and we had a really cool particle engine at that point, so we decided to figure out what we could use it to do. So we ended up making this kind of gravity game, where it just generates a lot of particles, and your goal is to complete the loop, get the particles to go back into the snake's mouth.
That makes me want to throw up.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So the basic concepts we had here was just that you could place these like attractors, and you can't see them too well on the projector screen, but there's also like a few little annihilators where if you touch them, it starts to destroy your particles, and if you lose, a certain percentage of your total, you don't have anything.
So
So,
I don't know if you know how to make it.
Yeah.
so somewhat like play auditorium.
Huh?
Can you only place 2 attractors at a time?
No, you can place as many as you want.
Yeah.
And you can make them stronger too. Oh, I missed this one.
The other, yeah, one of the things we had is as you.
Yeah, and it sort of randomly places the, as you move up for the levels, you get more of those annihilators, and it sort of randomly places more of them each time. We also want to have it where it might randomly place attractors at the beginning for an extra challenge too.
Yeah, we were also coming up with a few different ideas with like if you click on the
Nice mark.
and then we also said stuff like if you try to just go backwards, that's going to quickly lead to losing because there's just an invisible like annihilators there.
I'm curious, like which one of you was the impetus for this idea, sort of the particles going in the snake's mouth, and was that something that evolved over the process, or were you guys like, you know what we need to make?
Yeah, no, because we switched.
We
We
were
switched
more
games
like-
last night. Yeah, 'cause we were still working on our Parasite host game, and then realized that part of the mechanic wasn't working at all. So we just,
Okay.
I don't know. I think he thought of the, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I was just trying to think of, all right, we've got this particle engine. All we had at that point was the ability to play with a lot of particles, and like we could do simple hit detection on them, but
It's actually like beautiful and like gross at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like it's really an elegant way to throw up in your mouth.
well, the idea was that we were going to try and recreate the Orbrs using the particles to be like it's the body of the snake, and it doesn't quite work out that way in practice, but that was the idea there.
I think it's cooler.
Yeah.
If you made the particles look more scaly, it might.
Yeah. Well, part of the thing is that there's severe limitations about what you can draw these particles as.
Did you guys already say what your platform was?
If we can hear the music, just also.
Yeah, we
just
had
Jared wrote some music for us, and Stephanie did all the snake
art
face in the background and all that kind of stuff. So.
As for a platform, we just used processing, which is more or less it's a Java library that it makes it very simple to do a lot of drawing types of things. So, but it's basically we had coded it all from scratch in Java, and then it is possible to win.
I was just about to ask if you could place an attractor right in the neck.
Yeah, well, if you place, the thing is, like, you can see the yellow dots, that's whenever it's hitting an annihilator, and there's a bunch of invisible ones right there, so you can't just go backwards. It's gonna be, and that's the problem with trying stuff like that.
Okay, I think this will work.
I think
there's a cheating way.
Yeah, it's usually easier to do it with less than more, actually. Because once you start getting a lot of attractors, it just, the forces get crazy. We didn't have a whole lot of time to play test, so, almost. Well, you can see that there's the timer counting down, but it was destroying too many parts.
Eventually, it was going to be more puzzle-like with, trying to loop around the annihilators and that.
I've actually seen something like that where like
Yeah.
you have a particle system and you go around.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's basically everything we have, yeah. And you can still see it is losing some particles, but hopefully it's capturing enough to last to the next level.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it just goes to the next level. Now there's a new annihilator that
Yes.
yeah. Yeah,
This
the
would be
other
funny as hell.
honestly, the best thing to come out of this weekend was I had a lot of fun doing it, but now that I have this particle engine, I'm just gonna go and make a lot of weird special effects with it. Because when we were trying it for the more like parasite thing, this is limited to 2,500 particles, and it runs absolutely fine. We were pushing it up like at over 100,000, and it was still giving acceptable frame rates. And you can also just do stuff like make orbits and play with the different colors. And
You didn't change the location of the tractor, did you? So it's sort of randomized then exactly where they go on the path, then, so you never quite tell what the correct place is going to be for the tractor's on.
well, you can't change anything while it's moving. I mean, that's just something that we put in as a gameplay mechanic.
I was noticing that you had in the tractor place, and I don't think you changed the position, but when you launched it, it went into completely different paths when you're doing that.
I don't quite understand what you're...
The particles seem to follow a different path each time, even if you have the tractors in the same.
No, if you have the attractor in the exact same places, they will go the exact same way.
It's like double throw up.
Well, yeah, there's a limit to how many particles, and our idea was that you would have you have to maintain the loop of the body, and if you run out of particles for too long and you aren't, so you just have it going off in the middle of nowhere, then you lose because you've cut off the head of the snake or whatever.
This is very cool, you guys.
Yeah, and it's...
Almost.
Yeah, the most challenging thing was probably like whatever it was, 12, 18 hours in, and we were like, all right, we had an idea to be able to simplify a lot of the calculations to be able to do collisions of particles against particles, and in large numbers. And I still think the idea is solid. It's just the algorithms that we needed to write were a lot more complicated than we had time to do. So.
Did you have a resource for the algorithms that you picked?
Nope, we just did it all ourselves. It's all fairly basic. It's for like the gravity and the attractors. That's the reason why this runs so well and why the heat map and collision algorithms didn't work so well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you using some kind of blocking with them? Like they seem.
No, they don't. They're not aware of each other at all. Just the gravity, just multiple gravity points.
Yeah. Basically, they all have their own start, location and velocity, and based on there's some slight variation in that. But other than that, that's how they just react to the environment.
That's excellent.
Ready?
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
I'm going to give you some pretense as to how we got here first. None of us have ever really made a real game before. Like Justin's a C# programmer, he does that for a living, and she's a concept artist, and I am a web developer. So all together, we have no skills to make a game. We've made some small things here and there, like in JavaScript and stuff, but not near enough to be able to do something in this. And 48 hours is not enough time to learn Unity and do anything. So we decided to keep it simple, stupid kind of deal, and created a text-based game using C#, Visual Basic, and just assist it with graphics and try making it story-driven. So you start off as this character, Alex, in a house, and you kind of wake up, you don't really know where you are, who you are, anything. And you kind of just go throughout the house and around the house trying to collect information to figure out who you are, why you're there, etc. And you kind of just wander a little bit. So yeah, Heather did all the graphics and the artwork and lots of the typography, and Justin did all the coding and implemented. She also did the story, and I did a lot of tweeting about what we were doing. And moral support, saying you guys aren't moving fast enough and that kind of stuff. So
had our music done by Ian.
Yes,
he was really incredible.
Yes, we're very grateful for him.
This was done in Renoise. This one, some of the others were in Logic.
Really wanted to go with like a desolate, unknowing feeling. It's kind of what drove the really sparse window you get to work in. We talked for a while about having a frame behind it, but time permitting and my own unknowing of C# kind of led this. And but we were really happy in the way that it turned out, because we we left certain areas open to where we want to continue this a little bit more and expand upon it, because our first day we spent a lot of time talking about what the story is and what drives the character, and about this theme of kind of self-driven torture and going around and around. And actually this game is a loop in itself. You can't exit it.
You can't leave the grounds of the house. If you try to leave, you end up back at the house. It's kind of more the character is kind of self-torturing. It's kind of ambiguous. You can kind of decide for yourself and create, what exactly happened that made that the reason. But long story short, it's basically like we took the concept of the actual picture, a snake eating itself eternally, more like literally to this level, more metaphorically, where this person's literally tormenting themselves and pretty much, guilting themselves into this, where it might not even be their own fault, but that's where they are, and it's kind of an eternal thing for whatever reason. It's really up to you to decide why it's that way, if it's, something in their head, or literally something that's happening, or if they're haunting somewhere. That's kind of up to you. We wanted to have graphics for each one, but I didn't have time because I also had to write. So my time is drastically cut in half because I also had to write, and writing's not exactly my forte, but so we kind of had a time constraint, so we didn't have as many pictures as we wanted there to be.
Yeah,
and they're not finished either.
Yeah, before last night we had this much of an idea for a story, and then by last night we went to here. So
which, is what we were supposed to do, and then also we figured we kind of wanted it to go that way because we ended up blocking a bunch of rooms that we were originally going to explore, because that means later on, if we ever wanted to expand on the game, if you play it again, maybe one day there's a room that's open, then you can go in there and find out more about the character, and maybe what it is the reason that she's there, or why she's put herself there, because a lot of the concept, it was, she's more stuck in a memory, so she's kind of en route, but she's the only person in that memory, even though it might have been a good memory. She's kind of placed herself in that memory, and it's kind of just an empty place.
You win by accepting your fate.
Pretty much, actually.
And to go with the theme, I'm not going to say how you win, but you end where you start.
Well, I'm curious what led you guys to decide on this approach for a text-based game. Were there any text-based games you played in the past that sort of inspired you to choose this style?
Well, we don't we a lot of medieval games. A lot of people think text-based game, it's kind of dragons, fantasy, and we wanted maybe something more that followed a person, because text-based games are cool because when you play a text-based game, you're obviously going for characters and story, and because that's really all we had to work with, and we didn't even know we were going to have music, and then we had music and we were just wow. But with the theme, we didn't want to go with something that was particular to it's obviously more present, but it's not a particular time. You can there's room for you to imagine, and we kind of wanted that. We kind of wanted the person who was reading to have a story that they could enjoy, but also, they could kind of create a story off of her too for themselves. If we ever go back and add more, that'll be cool, because we have rooms that we say are there and you can go to them, but you can't go inside them. And I like playing a lot of story-driven games, and the theme kind of worked for us in that sense. And we also thought about I don't know if anyone's ever played Justine. That game, basically, it's a scary game, but the concept of it is someone who is doing something, and then the game kind of loops over. And I don't want to spoil anything in case people go play it, but the game Justine and what was it? Justine.
Stanley Parable.
Stanley Parable were kind of our inspirations and kind of where we wanted to go, because in the Stanley Parable, it's a narrator who basically is telling a story, and you're playing as the character, and it's more about having control as a human being and being a human being, and we just kind of wanted to play off more of like personal strife than like a big thing or anything like flashy. Just kind of something that you can think about and create off of was kind of where we wanted to go with it. And this just kind of worked with text-based, so we were like, sure.
It's cool.
Yeah.
So Ian, I'm curious, what led you to this sound for the specific title?
This was the first one I worked on. I got most of this, everything except for the vocals done on Friday night. Being in a farmhouse or somewhere isolated, I really was kind of drawn to having some strings, kind of some larger string section for the background and then featuring the violin. I used loops for some of the other compositions. This is all original work, so meaning I put in notes one by one, just step recording and re-noise with the piano and strings. And then recorded myself singing this today and added some reverb and things like that. But I wanted to have this sort of sense of a lot of big empty space, kind of cavernous sound, and isolation, really, with the soundtrack. So that's.
I think it's a perfect combination with the text storyline. Like this is a text game I would definitely want to play. Like I already want to go find out about the mysteries and.
I'll tell you what, man, we got a lot of locked doors, and you're gonna
Yeah.
want to look for keys.
There's
do
no
that.
keys. Maybe eventually, but like that's kind of
That's what I would do. I'd be like, oh, let's go find keys. Fuck
Yeah, you're
That's the thing, you don't get
Look for-
replay value out of this, but we do hook you in for at least 3 hours trying to figure it out the first time.
You guys need to go through like Open Vein or one of the middleware DLC partners, so the key's $1.
Oh, I think the last thing I'd like to mention is Heather was absolutely awesome. Phil was awesome for yelling at us to work, and I was awesome because I had like a semester and a half worth of C# classes, and I just ran with it. So, and Ian was absolutely incredible. And we had a lot of fun here, guys, and we kind of hope everyone else did. We weren't too loud shouting about obscure and
bad things.
And bad things. So, thank you guys.
Congratulations.
All right. Ourobeardos. I started out with the concept when we were brainstorming of a 2D platformer. I'd never programmed a platformer before, so I wanted to. And I had this idea of you were running along the surface of a level, which happened to be the snake, and then the snake was chasing you, eating itself, and you had to run ahead of it to avoid death. And I originally was brainstorming with the group that Ian and Brian and
Specify something that everyone's recording for music.
I didn't have music in my game, but I was brainstorming with Ian's group, and Ian had some strong ideas about stuff he wanted to do, and he tried to incorporate some of the ideas that I was coming up with, and it was moving away from it being a platformer, and I wanted to do a platformer, and I thought that this idea would be cool, so I just went off and went solo. And I like old school, early 80s Atari and arcade games, so this is the aesthetic. Also, it's really cheap and quick and easy to do graphics when you're this minimal. And I had Steve Felix help me with the animations since I was doing everything else. I ran into problems with the platform. I was using the Game Maker Beta, and I was hoping to make an HTML5 game out of this, but the environment ate my project, so I had to start over twice, and I was lucky enough to get it done. I wanted to have more levels where you have an early concept level where you just get the basic idea what the game's about, and then the challenge would ramp up. But in the end, I only had time to do a level that had all the game features that I developed so far in it, and it is impossible to win. Basically, let me get into the game, and then I'll explain as I'm talking. Can you guys hear me okay still?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to start, and over at the left, that flashing rectangle thing, or triangle thing, is the Ouroboros head. It's the bit refresh. You're running through a memory register, and these are bytes. This is a byte of memory. And above you, you can see each bit, and you can jump and flip a bit if you know the right operation. And you can see the letter M at the bottom of the screen. That's your clue. That's what you're trying to get the letter at the top of the screen to read. So if you know ASCII and you can map that to binary, then you know how to win the game. So when you get these to match up, that's what happens when you die.
Now you know.
Now, if you get the top letter and the bottom letter to match up, you can jump into the E that you see at the right hand of the level, and that executes the byte. So it checks and matches them, and then you win. And then if that's not challenging enough, there will be a Unicode version. So that's it. All the different switches there, I didn't live long enough to show you them all, but they're different bitwise operations that affect whatever bit the little shiny line is pointing at.
So can I just say that this is my favorite one, and I think that everything has been absolutely brilliant, but I feel like you just nailed the aesthetics so solidly, and Steve, your guy too. Like I feel like
That's
like
truly
this
no
is like
problem.
quiet nights when I would like sneak out late at my grandparents' house to play on their old computer. You know, it's like it's awesome.
Thank you.
And, yeah, it's a nostalgia that gets me.
Did you pick the style? Like, did you pick this 8-bitish style to constrain yourself so that, like, because of the time strain, or was that?
It's easy to do for me because I don't have to worry about it looking real or good or anything like that. I like that aesthetic from childhood, and it did help me with it's cheap in terms of time to produce graphics like this. And I had to do everything. I had to do the sound effects, I had to do the graphics, I had to come up with the rules and everything, program it. So I really didn't have a whole lot of time to put into other activities.
Have you beaten it?
I have a cheat mode that I disabled, but I should have left in there so I could show you the ending. But no, that level is ridiculous. There are some changes I need to make in the design because as it stands right now, the switches, when they reset after you use them, they reset randomly to a different type of switch. And that means that it's very luck-based if there's even a possibility that you can set the bit to what it needs to be for you to win. So I need to rethink that somehow and come up with a way that you have to do them in a certain order and it's more deterministic so that you don't just randomly play for like a millennium.
But I feel like that's half the beauty of what you've done. You know, it captures a whole generation of computer programs that were infuriating.
Yeah. I do get that, yeah. It's undeniable.
I don't know, it seems about as difficult as doing like x86 assembly.
Actually, it's definitely harder than ours, probably, when it comes down to it.
Yeah, the actual gameplay though of like the only thing to avoid is that thing that pushes you to the right of the screen. So it's not challenging, it's just frustratingly, repetitively difficult. So I'm going to be doing more with this. I will probably, when I have time to recover from sleep death, to come up with some levels that will be a little bit more feasible.
Chris, have you done 48-hour challenges before now? And if you haven't?
No, this is my first one. I've done a little bit of Game Maker development, and I've been working in Game Maker for a little bit over a year now on my first video game ever called Booby Teeth, which is about a fish that I drew when I was 6 years old, and he had like a big booby trap mouth, and he eats other fish. And that's all the experience I've had with Game Maker. Earlier last week, Matt gave me a key for the HTML5 beta, which is the latest version of Game Maker, and I played with it enough to build a Space Invaders clone in HTML5, and that was fun. But when I went to use it on a real game, it was, well, not that Space Invaders isn't real, but it was something was going on and it screwed me up. and I lost about 12 hours of work that I had to redo. And I will probably still be a fan of Game Maker once they fix that problem. But until then, I'm using 8.0.
If anybody wants one of those keys, please let me know, because it's supposed to be on the mountain. We got here on Friday, and everybody else had their own thing going anyways. Sorry.
Yeah,
Just email me on City.
You know, I'm kind of glad that it happened, because I think it's such a.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I know it probably really sucks to go through that, but I really do.
Can you think back to the time when you were still playing on maybe collaborating with our games in addition to doing your own?
Yeah, no, I just lost time from having to redo my project twice. I couldn't spare the time to help out more.
God, these are all like I'm so impressed with like everybody here. Like I feel like, man, this is awesome.
Thank you again, Chris. Thank you all. We're all wonderful. You made this go extraordinarily well for our first try. Everybody kept the peace and kept it relatively clean. And now we thank Lean Dog also for trusting us with this base for a whole 48 hours overnight. And now we just ask that you clean up very carefully and thoroughly, and we'll get to sleep.